Translate this in 48 hours, and my salary for the week is yours. $89,000. But let's be real, the closest you'll ever get to Japanese is cleaning up the sushi I spilled on the carpet. Right, cleaning girl? Noah Whitlock's laughter echoed through the glass walls of the executive boardroom on the 50th floor of Klein Dynamics. He smirked, pointing a polished leather shoe at the damp spot I was currently scrubbing. Around the massive mahogany table, a dozen senior executives chuckled. Sebastian Klein, the CEO, didn't even look up from his phone. To them, I wasn't Ariana Morales. I was just the night shift janitor, a uniform with a mop, a nobody that I kept my head down, my grip tightening around the aluminum handle of the mop until my knuckles turned white. I didn't say a word. I didn't let my face show a single ounce of the burning rage pooling in my stomach. I just nodded, wiped the stain, and backed away toward the door. But here's the thing they didn't know. The document sitting on that table, the one causing a massive panic attack across the entire board of directors, was a contract from Tanaka MicroSystems, a $4.8 billion acquisition deal. I could read the bold characters from 20 feet away. It wasn't just Japanese. It was heavily technical, drafted in a highly specific, formal Heisei-era legal structure. I knew this because I didn't just speak English. I am completely fluent in Japanese, Korean, and Spanish. I read high-level technical documents for fun that I am 25 years old, and by day, I am the girl scrubbing toilets in Manhattan. But by night, sitting in a tiny, freezing apartment in Queens, I am Quill Shadow, a freelance technical translator. I just don't make enough to save my family. My mother is currently lying in a hospital bed in our living room, paralyzed from a severe stroke. We are drowning in $68,000 of medical debt. Oh, and our landlord gave us exactly 96 hours to pay the rent, or we are thrown out onto the street. 96 hours. The clock was ticking so loud in my head it was giving me migraines to SO. $89,000? That wasn't just a number to me. That was my mother's life. That was my salvation. But there was a much darker reason I was working at Klein Dynamics, emptying trash cans for the exact same executives who ruined my life. This company owed me. Specifically, Noah Whitlock owed me. Years ago, my father, Dr. Ariana Morales, was the absolute best linguistic engineer this company ever had. He spent 15 years building their translation databases from the ground up. He was a genius. But in 2008, my dad stumbled onto something he shouldn't have. He found out Noah Whitlock, who was just a rising manager back then, was intentionally altering technical schematics in his translations to cut corners and pocket the extra budget. Before my dad could blow the whistle, Whitlock struck first. He framed my father. He planted stolen proprietary code on my dad's hard drive and accused him of corporate espionage. Klein Dynamics didn't just fire my dad. They destroyed him. They erased his 15 years of contributions. They blacklisted him from the tech industry. We lost our house. We fell into absolute poverty. The stress literally ate my father alive until his heart gave out in 2020. I watched the greatest man I ever knew die with a ruined name, all while Noah Whitlock was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. I made a promise at my father's grave. I swore I would not let his death be for nothing. I would take back what they stole from us. And now, looking at the panic in the boardroom, I realized my moment had finally arrived. "It is completely unreadable, Sebastian," Noah complained, dragging a hand down his face as he stared at the Tanaka contract. "Hiroshi Tanaka is playing games. He sent this in an archaic dialect mixed with next-generation microchip terminology. Our software is spitting out garbage. We run it through the AI, and it translates the core clause as the flying fish eats the motherboard. It's a mess." "I don't care," Sebastian Klein snapped, finally putting his phone down. His cold eyes locked onto Noah. "Tanaka is arriving in exactly 2 days to sign this. If we don't know exactly what stipulations he put in the fine print, we can't sign. If we don't sign, our stock plummets, and the board will have both our heads." I wasn't joking. Find someone who can read this. Pay them whatever they want. Just get it done. Noah swallowed hard, clearly sweating under the collar of his $3,000 suit. I will handle it. I have a contact at the university. I'll get a rough translation by tomorrow morning. I pushed my cleaning cart out into the hallway, the heavy doors closing behind me. A rough translation? Noah was lying. I knew his university contacts. None of them specialized in Heisei-era corporate legal jargon. He was going to use a backdoor patch software, and guess the rest. He was going to fake it, and that gave me an idea. A very dangerous, very stupid idea. Later that night, when the 50th floor was completely empty and the security cameras were on their scheduled 3-minute reset loop, I slipped back into the main conference room. The Tanaka document was locked in a glass display, but Noah had carelessly left the preliminary scanned copies scattered on the whiteboard ledge. I picked up a dry erase marker. My hand was shaking. If I got caught doing this, I wouldn't just be fired. Whitlock would have me arrested. He would probably call immigration and customs enforcement on my mother just out of spite. He had threatened lower-level employees with that before, but I thought about the 96 hours. I thought about the $68,000. I thought about my dad that I took the cap off the marker. I looked at the first page of the contract, pinned to the board. Noah had written notes in the margins, trying to guess the context. He had translated the main subheading as Agreement for Standard Employee Transition. I scoffed quietly. Idiot that I crossed out his handwriting. Underneath it, in neat, perfect block letters, I wrote the accurate translation. Mandatory termination of 700 mid-level engineers prior to acquisition. It wasn't a standard transition. Tanaka was demanding a mass layoff, and Noah hadn't even realized it. If Klein signed this blindly, they would be in breach of a massive labor union contract that I didn't stop there. I moved to the next page, scanning the technical specifications for the microchips. Noah thought it was a standard hardware handover. I crossed his notes out again and wrote, Violation of intellectual property. Tanaka MicroSystems retains sole ownership of all pre-existing Klein Dynamics patents. I spent exactly 10 minutes correcting his massive billion-dollar mistakes. I broke down the archaic terminology. I laid out the hidden traps Tanaka had buried in the text. I gave them the exact roadmap they needed to survive the deal.at the bottom of the whiteboard. Right below the final correction, I signed my freelancer alias. Quill shadow did I drop the marker, grabbed my cleaning cart, and practically ran to the service elevator. My heart was hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought I was going to pass out. I had just handed them the keys to the castle. I figured when Sebastian Klein saw the board tomorrow, he would demand to know who Quill Shadow was. I would step forward, prove my skills, claim the $89,000, save my mother, and finally get my foot in the door to clear my dad's name. It was a perfect plan, but I had underestimated just how evil Noah Whitlock truly was. Because when I came into work the next evening, expecting to be called into the CEO's office as a hero, I found out Noah had taken all the credit, and worse, he knew someone was watching him, and he was coming for me. I walked into the employee locker room the next evening, exhausted but running on the pure adrenaline of my plan. I expected whispers. I expected Sebastian Klein to be demanding the identity of the mysterious Quill Shadow who had just saved his $4.8 billion deal. Instead, I walked into a nightmare. My gray metal locker was hanging wide open, and white clothes were thrown across the damp tile floor. My backpack was unzipped and dumped upside down, but it wasn't a random robbery. The only things missing were my handheld translation device and a silver engraved Mont Blanc pen, the last physical thing I had left of my father, Dr. Elias Morales. Panic gripped my throat. I dropped to my knees, frantically searching under the benches, my hands trembling. It was gone. The pen he used to sign his contracts, the pen I kept with me for luck, was gone. Before I could even process the violation, my supervisor's voice crackled over the intercom, telling me to report to Human Resources immediately. They didn't call the night shift janitors to HR unless you were being fired. My stomach dropped. I dragged myself up to the 4th floor, wiping the nervous sweat from my palms. When I pushed open the frosted glass door of the HR office, I froze. Sitting across from the HR director, legs crossed and looking completely relaxed, was Noah Whitlock. "Ah, Ariana," Noah said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. He didn't call me the cleaning girl this time. He knew. "Please take a seat." The HR director slid a tablet across the table. "Miss Morales, we have a serious breach of protocol. Security footage caught you lingering near the executive boardroom at 2 in the morning yesterday." She tapped the screen. The video showed me pushing my cart down the hallway, looking around before stepping out of frame near the boardroom doors. But it didn't show me inside. The camera loop reset, just like I knew it would. Then the video cut to a different angle, 30 minutes later. It showed Noah Whitlock opening the boardroom doors, looking over his shoulder and slipping inside. Mr. Whitlock discovered the highly confidential Tanaka documents had been tampered with, the HR director said coldly. Someone wrote over his preliminary translations. He went in to secure the room after noticing someone had been inside. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. He didn't go in to secure the room. He went in, saw my flawless translations on the whiteboard, erased the name Quill Shadow, and claimed the work as his own. He stole my work, just like he stole my father's. And now he was framing me for snooping to cover his tracks. "I was just cleaning the hallway," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "I didn't touch any documents." Noah leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine with a cold, dead stare. "Are you sure about that, Ariana? Because corporate espionage is a federal crime. Your father taught us all a very hard lesson about that, didn't he?" My breath caught. He knew exactly who I was. He had put the pieces together. The HR director frowned. "If we find proof you access those files, you won't just be terminated. We will press charges. For now, you are on strict probation. Hand over your master keys. You are restricted to the basement levels until further notice that I didn't say a word." I handed over my keys and walked out. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, Noah stepped out into the hallway, blocking my path. The fake sympathy was gone. His face was a mask of pure malice. "Did you really think you could play me?" he whispered, stepping so close I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "Did you really think some pathetic little janitor was going to walk in and take my $89,000? You stole my work," I gritted out, my fists clenching at my sides. "You can't read Heisei-era Japanese. You're going to crash that deal." Noah laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "It doesn't matter what I can read. I already sent the board your little whiteboard notes under my name. Client thinks I'm a genius. And you? You are going to stay in the basement, keep your mouth shut, and scrub the floors." I glared at him. "I will tell Sebastian Klein exactly who Quill Shadow is. I'll prove it." That Noah's smile faded. He leaned in right next to my ear. "If you say one word to Sebastian, I will pick up my phone and call immigration and customs enforcement." My blood ran ice cold. "I know about your mother, Ariana," he said softly. "I know she's paralyzed. I know her visa expired 2 years ago because she couldn't afford the renewal fees after your father died. You cause a scene, I make one phone call, and IC will drag her right out of that hospital bed and deport her. She won't survive the flight." He stepped back, admiring the sheer horror on my face. He reached into his perfectly tailored suit jacket and pulled out a silver engraved Mont Blanc pen. My father's pen. He clicked it twice, smirked, and slid it back into his pocket. "Go clean the basement, cleaning girl," he spat. I spent the next 4 hours in an absolute daze. The basement was dark, damp, and smelled like industrial bleach. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's smug face. He had me completely trapped. If I fought back, he would kill my mother. The medical debt, the 96 hours to pay rent, the $89,000, it was all slipping away. But I couldn't just give up. I had my freelance work. I had a deadline for a Korean tech firm, due by morning, that would pay me just enough to cover the rent. I snuck into an empty utility closet, locked the door, and pulled out my battered 5-year-old laptop. It was slow, half the keys were sticking, but it was my only lifeline. I was halfway through translating the code when the doorknob rattled that I froze. I had locked it, but Noah had the executive override codes. The door swung open, and he stood there holding a steaming, extra-large cup of black coffee from the executive lounge. "Taking a break on company time?" he asked, stepping into the cramped closet. "Get out," I said, slamming my laptop shut and grabbing it to my chest. "I just came to bring you a drink." "You look tired," he said, feigning innocence. I said, "Get out." I backed up against the mop sink. Noah took another step forward. He looked down at the old laptop in my arms. He looked at the desperation in my eyes. And then, with a casual flick of his wrist, he tipped the giant cup forward. The scalding hot coffee splashed directly onto my laptop. I screamed as the boiling liquid hit my hands, dropping the computer onto the concrete floor. It hit with a sickening crack. The screen shattered, the power supply fizzed violently, and a thick plume of acrid black smoke poured out of the keyboard. "Oops," Noah said, tossing the empty cup onto the floor next to my ruined machine. "Clumsy me." I dropped to my knees, ignoring the burns on my hands, desperately trying to wipe the coffee off the motherboard. But it was dead. The screen was completely black. My work, my freelance clients, my only way to pay the rent and keep my mother alive. Everything was gone in a fraction of a second. Despair hit me so hard I couldn't even breathe. Noah crouched down next to me. "I told you, Ariana. You are nothing. Your father was nothing. You are going to die in the exact same gutter he did, and there is nothing you can do about it." He stood up, adjusted his tie, and walked out, leaving me alone in the dark utility closet with the smoking ruins of my life. I sat there on the cold concrete for a long time. The tears wouldn't stop falling. He had won. He had completely destroyed me, just like he destroyed my dad. I had no computer. I had no money. I was restricted to the basement. Tanaka was arriving tomorrow morning to sign the deal, and Noah was going to take all the glory, get the $89,000, and I was going to be evicted. But as I stared at the burnt plastic of my keyboard, the despair slowly started to morph into something else. Something much colder. Something extremely dangerous. He thought he broke me. He thought destroying my laptop meant I couldn't fight back. But Noah Whitlock forgot one massive, fatal detail about the Tanaka MicroSystems contract. He stole my translations from the whiteboard. He thought he had the whole puzzle. He didn't realize I never translated the final page. And tomorrow, when he stands in front of the board of directors and the CEO of Tanaka, he is going to walk right into the deadliest trap I ever set. The next morning, the 50th floor was an absolute madhouse. The $4.8 billion acquisition meeting was set for 10 o'clock sharp. Since I was officially restricted to the basement, I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the executive boardroom. But when you are the invisible cleaning girl, you know all the security blind spots. I borrowed a catering uniform from a friendly kitchen staffer, grabbed a silver tray of sparkling water, and slipped right through the heavy oak doors just as the board of directors took their seats. Sebastian Klein sat at the head of the massive table, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Next to him, a massive high-definition screen was projecting a live, secure video feed. Sitting on the other side of that feed in a sleek Tokyo office was Hiroshi Tanaka, the billionaire chairman of Tanaka MicroSystems, flanked by his entire legal team. And standing right at the front of our boardroom, wearing a brand new custom suit and a sickeningly confident smile, was Noah Whitlock. He held a laser pointer, clicking through a digital slideshow of the contract. He was basking in the glory. He actually looked Sebastian Klein in the eye and took full credit for staying up all night to manually decode the complex document. The executives were nodding. They were eating right out of the palm of his hand. "As you can see on page 4, Noah said smoothly, pointing at a translated clause I had written for him on the whiteboard the night before. Tanaka is requesting a transfer of all pre-existing patents. I have cross-referenced this with our legal team, and we can counteroffer with a shared licensing agreement. He was reading my exact words. He was parading my genius as his own. My grip on the silver tray tightened so hard my knuckles popped, but I just watched him. I waited in the corner of the room. Because I knew page 4 was exactly where my whiteboard notes ended, Noah clicked to the final slide. The most crucial part of the entire acquisition. The binding financial clause. This was the page I had intentionally left completely blank. Noah cleared his throat, his confident smile faltering for a fraction of a second. He didn't have my translation to steal anymore. He had to rely on whatever cheap AI patch software he used to guess the rest. And finally, the terminal clause, Noah said, his voice a little tighter now. Mr. Tanaka has outlined the final payout structure. Upon signing, Klein Dynamics will absorb the secondary liabilities of Tanaka's overseas manufacturing branch, resulting in a minor, temporary stock dilution of roughly 2%. It is a standard operational tax, completely manageable. He smiled, looking down the table at Sebastian Klein. I recommend we sign immediately, sir. Klein nodded, letting out a massive breath of relief. He picked up his heavy gold fountain pen. Excellent work, Noah. Truly, you saved this company. He moved the pen toward the signature line on the printed contract. I couldn't stay silent. If Klein signed that paper, the company would instantly take on billions in hidden toxic debt. The stock wouldn't dilute by 2%. It would crash to zero by tomorrow morning. Everyone would lose their jobs. My mother's hospital would lose its corporate funding, and Noah would walk away with his massive bonus before the ink even dried. I dropped the silver tray. The heavy metal hit the hardwood floor with a deafening crash, sending shattered glass and sparkling water flying everywhere. The entire boardroom jumped. All 12 executives whipped their heads around to stare at me. Sebastian Klein froze, his pen hovering just an inch above the paper. What the hell is wrong with you? Noah snapped, his face flushing with immediate violent rage. He recognized me instantly beneath the catering uniform. Security, get this girl out of here right now. I didn't run. I didn't back down. I stepped right over the broken glass, walked straight up to the edge of the mahogany table, and stared dead into Noah's panicked eyes. You misread 12 technical terms and completely reversed the meaning of an entire chapter, I said, my voice ringing out loud and clear in the dead silent room. This is Heisei-era Japanese, not modern. You could hear a pin drop. The executives stared at me like I had just grown a second head. A janitor in a wet catering uniform had just interrupted a billion-dollar merger to publicly humiliate the chief operating officer. Shut your mouth. Noah hissed, stepping toward me with his fists clenched. He looked wildly at the CEO. Sebastian, she is a disgruntled night shift cleaner. She is clinically insane. I am having her arrested right this second. Wait, Sebastian Klein interrupted, his voice like cracking ice. He slowly put his pen down and looked at me. His eyes narrowed, studying my face. What did you just say? I said he is lying to you, I replied, never breaking eye contact with the CEO. That terminal clause has absolutely nothing to do with absorbing liabilities. Noah used a modern digital translation matrix, which completely failed to recognize the archaic legal syntax of the Heisei dialect. I pointed a shaking finger at the massive screen, projecting the Japanese text. If you sign that document, Mr. Klein, you're not absorbing a temporary tax. You are legally admitting that Klein Dynamics utilized stolen proprietary code in your flagship software. You are signing a full confession of corporate theft. The penalty isn't 2% stock dilution. It is the immediate forfeiture of your entire company to Tanaka MicroSystems for pennies on the dollar. It is a hostile takeover hidden in plain sight. The color completely drained from Sebastian Klein's face. He looked at the document, then up at Noah. Noah was physically shaking now. She is lying. She is a nobody. She scrubs the toilets in the basement." Klein ignored him. He reached out and picked up the final, untranslated page of the original Japanese contract. It was dense, complex, and looked like an absolute nightmare of black ink. He slid it directly across the long table toward me. "Prove it," Klein demanded softly. Noah lunged forward. "Sebastian, you cannot be serious. You are going to trust a janitor over your COO. If she is lying, I will have her thrown in federal prison for the rest of her life." Klein snapped, his eyes locked on me. "Read it, right now." I picked up the paper. My hands weren't shaking anymore. This was my world. This was the exact thing my father trained me for before this very company destroyed him. I took a deep breath, scanning the complex characters, and then I began to speak. That I didn't just read it. I dismantled it. That I started in flawless, highly formal Japanese, reciting the exact legal phrasing so the Tanaka delegation on the video screen could hear my pronunciation. Then I seamlessly switched to English, breaking down the trap hidden in the syntax. I cross-referenced the technical microchip terminology using fluent Korean, as the hardware parts were sourced from Seoul, explaining exactly how the wording intentionally confused standard manufacturing debt with intellectual property forfeiture. I spoke for 3 straight minutes without stuttering, without hesitating, ripping Noah's fake translation to absolute shreds. I laid out the entire hostile takeover strategy on a silver platter, exposing every single trap door they had built into the text. When I finally stopped and put the paper back down on the table, the boardroom was dead silent. The executives were paralyzed in their leather chairs. Sebastian Klein was staring at me with his mouth slightly open, utterly stunned. Noah Whitlock looked like he was going to vomit. His face was ghostly pale, his expensive suit suddenly looking 3 sizes too big. He backed away from the table, stammering, desperately trying to formulate a lie, but there was nowhere left to hide. He had been completely exposed in front of the entire board. But before Klein could say a single word to him, a slow, echoing sound came from the high-definition speakers at the end of the table. It was the sound of someone clapping. Every head in the room turned toward the screen. Hiroshi Tanaka, the ruthless, untouchable billionaire who had sat perfectly silent for the last hour, was leaning forward in his chair. He pushed his legal team aside, his dark eyes locked directly onto me through the camera lens. And the very first words he spoke changed everything. The clapping from the high-definition speakers cut through the dead silence of the boardroom like a gunshot. Every single executive, including Sebastian Klein and a sweating Noah Whitlock, stared at the massive screen. Hiroshi Tanaka, a man known for never showing a single ounce of emotion during business negotiations, was actually smiling. He pushed his team of lawyers aside, leaning so close to the camera that his dark eyes seemed to pierce right through the digital feed. When he finally spoke, he didn't use English. He spoke directly to me in rapid, flawless Japanese. "You have his eyes," Tanaka said, his voice carrying a heavy, undeniable weight. "And you have his absolute precision. Tell me, young woman, are you the daughter of Dr. Elias Morales?" I felt a sudden, sharp lump form in my throat. Hearing his name, hearing my father's name spoken with actual respect in this building after so many years, almost broke my composure, but I held my ground. I looked directly at the screen and replied in the same formal Japanese. "I am Ariana Morales," I said clearly. "Dr. Elias Morales was my father." Tanaka closed his eyes for a brief second, nodding slowly. Then he switched to English so the entire boardroom could understand every single word. "Your father was a brilliant man," Tanaka announced, his voice booming through the speakers. "Many years ago, before Tanaka MicroSystems became the empire it is today, we faced a catastrophic software failure. It was your father who flew to Tokyo, worked for 72 hours straight, and saved our core infrastructure. We owed him a great debt. A debt this very company prevented me from repaying when they unjustly terminated him." A collective gasp rippled across the mahogany table. Sebastian Klein turned completely white, his eyes darting between me and the screen. "Mr. Tanaka," Klein started, stammering slightly. "We were entirely unaware of this connection." "Silence," Tanaka snapped, holding up a single hand. The billionaire didn't even look at the CEO. His gaze remained locked on me. I was ready to walk away from this acquisition the moment I saw the butchered translations your chief operating officer sent me last night. It was an insult, but hearing you dismantle that contract, Miss Morales, it changes things. Tanaka finally shifted his attention to Sebastian Klein. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by cold, ruthless business calculation. "Mr. Klein, I am still willing to sign this $4.8 billion agreement today," Tanaka said, "but the terms are now completely different. I will only proceed under one non-negotiable condition. Ariana Morales will immediately be appointed as the general language and technical advisor for this entire merger." The boardroom erupted into chaos. Executives started whispering frantically. Noah Whitlock looked like he had just been physically struck. "You cannot be serious." Noah screamed, slamming his hands down on the table. He completely lost whatever professional mask he had left. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is a janitor. She is a criminal. She broke into this room last night. She tampered with highly sensitive documents, and she is trying to commit corporate espionage, just like her disgraced father." He turned wildly to the CEO. "Sebastian, do not listen to this. She is manipulating the situation. I translated those documents. I did the work." This was exactly the moment I had been waiting for. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just reached into the pocket of my wet catering uniform and pulled out a small, black USB drive. "You know Noah," I said quietly, the room instantly hushing to hear me. "When you treat the night shift cleaning staff like they are invisible, you tend to forget that we have keys to every single room in this building, including the security server room. You thought the hallway cameras were on a strict 3-minute reset loop because that is what the official manual says. But my father wrote the code for those security servers 12 years ago. He built in a continuous backup drive. Nothing is ever truly erased." I walked over to the presentation laptop sitting on the podium, pulled Noah's flash drive out, and shoved mine in. "Let's see who really did the work," I said, hitting play. The massive screen split in half. On the left side, the high-definition video showed the hallway outside the boardroom at 2 in the morning. It showed Noah Whitlock looking around nervously before slipping through the doors. The camera angle switched to the interior of the boardroom. The entire table watched in dead silence as the video showed Noah walking up to the whiteboard, staring at my perfect translations, pulling out his phone to take pictures, and then frantically erasing my signature. Quill shadow. "That is fake." Noah yelled, his voice cracking. "She doctored that footage." "Oh, I am not done," I said coldly, clicking to the next file. The video on the right side of the screen started playing. It was time-stamped just an hour later. It showed the basement employee locker room. It showed Noah Whitlock, the chief operating officer of a billion-dollar company, sneaking into the dingy room, ripping open my metal locker, dumping my bag onto the floor, and stealing my father's engraved Mont-Blanc pen. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. It was suffocating. You could literally hear Noah's rapid, panicked breathing. Sebastian Klein slowly stood up from his chair. The look of sheer disgust on his face was terrifying. He didn't just look angry. He looked like he was staring at a disease. "Sebastian, please," Noah begged, backing away from the table, his hands raised in surrender. "I was trying to protect the company. She is a liability. You are done," Klein said, his voice dangerously low. "You lied to me. You nearly cost this company billions of dollars. You stole from an employee, and you fabricated translations on a federal document." Klein looked at the head of HR, who was sitting near the back of the room. "Terminate him. Right now. Freeze every single share of internal stock he owns. Call security and have him physically removed from this property." If he ever steps foot within 100 yards of this building again, I want him arrested. You can't do this to me. Noah screamed, his face turning a violent shade of purple as two massive security guards burst through the boardroom doors. They grabbed him by the arms, dragging him backward. I built this department. I am the COO. You need me. Hiroshi Tanaka's voice boomed from the speakers one last time, cutting through Noah's pathetic screaming. You are not a chief operating officer, Mr. Whitlock, Tanaka said coldly. You are a fraud. You are a danger to the international tech industry, and I will personally ensure you never work in this sector again. Noah's desperate screams echoed down the hallway as the security guards dragged him to the elevator, the heavy oak doors slamming shut behind him. He was gone. The man who ruined my father, the man who nearly destroyed my life, was completely, utterly finished. Sebastian Klein slowly sat back down. He took a deep breath, smoothing his tie, trying to regain control of his boardroom. He looked up at the screen, gave Tanaka a slow nod, and then turned his gaze entirely onto me. All right, Miss Morales, Klein said, his voice surprisingly calm. Mr. Tanaka wants you as our general advisor. You clearly have the skills, and you clearly just saved this company from a fatal error. What are your terms? I looked at the CEO. I looked at the panicked executives, and I realized for the first time in my entire life I held all the cards. I wasn't the girl scrubbing toilets anymore. I was the one holding the keys to the empire, and I was about to make them pay for every single thing they took from my family. What are your terms? Sebastian Klein asked. I let the dead silence hang in the boardroom for a few long seconds. I wanted them to feel the weight of this moment. I wanted every single millionaire sitting in those expensive leather chairs to realize that their entire corporate future, their stock options, and their careers were currently resting in the palm of the 25-year-old girl who emptied their trash cans. First, I said, my voice perfectly steady, the $89,000 you promised for translating this document. I want it wired directly to my bank account before this meeting is adjourned. My mother is in the hospital, and I have a $68,000 medical bill that needs to be cleared today. I am not waiting until the end of the pay period. Klein didn't even blink. He looked over his shoulder at his chief financial officer and pointed a sharp finger. Do it right now. Wire her the money. Before I could speak again, Hiroshi Tanaka's deep voice cut in from the video screen. Miss Morales, your father's brilliant work was the absolute foundation of my company's early success. The fact that his family suffered in poverty while we profited is a stain on my personal honor. Aside from your new position, Tanaka MicroSystems will immediately wire you a $120,000 signing bonus. Consider it a very late, very sincere thank you to Dr. Elias Morales. I felt hot tears prick the corners of my eyes, but I forced them back. I swallowed the lump in my throat and bowed my head slightly toward the screen. Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. I accept. I turned my attention back to the CEO. As for my new role here, I will take the general language and technical advisor position. My starting salary will be $380,000 a year. I will have full, unchecked autonomy over the entire international translation division, and I report directly to the board of directors. Nobody else. Done, Klein said, practically sweating with relief that I wasn't demanding his immediate resignation. Is that all? No, I said, leaning forward and placing my hands flat on the polished mahogany table. The final condition is the most important one. Klein Dynamics will authorize its senior corporate legal team to officially reopen the case of Dr. Elias Morales. You will submit all the new evidence proving Noah Whitlock framed him. You will publicly, legally clear my father's name of all corporate espionage charges, and you will restore his legacy in this company's history. If you refuse, I walk out that door right now, and this $4.8 billion merger dies today. The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Admitting they wrongfully terminated an innocent employee and let a corrupt executive frame him was a massive public relations disaster. But losing a hostile takeover and crashing the company was a corporate death sentence. Klein closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and looked up at me. We will have the legal paperwork drafted by this afternoon. You have my word. I nodded slowly, stepping back from the table. Then you can sign the contract, Mr. Klein. And just like that, the war was over. The next 48 hours felt like something pulled straight out of a dream. The exact moment that $89,000 hit my checking account, I walked straight into the hospital's billing department. I didn't say a single word. I just slid my debit card across the counter and paid off the entire $68,000 medical debt in one massive swipe. The billing clerk stared at the computer screen, completely shocked. I just smiled, walked up to my mother's room, held her fragile hand, and told her we were finally safe. The 96-hour eviction notice taped to our crappy Queens apartment door? I ripped it off and threw it in the trash. Within a month, we were completely packed up and gone. I bought a beautiful, single-story, fully accessible house in Long Island. It had massive floor-to-ceiling windows, a huge living room for all her medical equipment, and a quiet, green backyard garden where she could watch the birds. The doctors said the fresh air and the total removal of financial stress were already doing absolute miracles for her vitals. For the first time in over a decade, my mother was actually smiling, and Noah Whitlock, his life completely, totally imploded. Hiroshi Tanaka kept his word. Noah was permanently blacklisted from the international tech industry. Nobody would even hire him to manage a spreadsheet. But his real nightmare started when Klein's legal team formally reopened my dad's case. In order to clear my father's name, they had to throw Noah straight to the wolves. They handed over all the security footage, the digital footprints, and the fake translations to the federal authorities. The man who callously threatened to call IC and have my paralyzed mother deported was now facing 10 to 15 years in federal prison for massive corporate fraud. He actually tried calling me once from an unknown number, crying and begging for me to talk to the feds for him. I listened to him sob for about 5 seconds, and then I hung up. With my father's name officially cleared, his reputation in the tech world was fully restored. He was finally recognized as the brilliant pioneer he truly was. But I wanted his name to mean something more than just corporate success. I took my massive signing bonus from Tanaka and launched the Elias Legacy Fund. It is a fully funded scholarship foundation strictly dedicated to providing full-ride university tuition for the children of working-class immigrants. The kids whose parents work the night shifts, who scrub the floors, who fix the roads, who are treated like they don't matter. I wanted to give them the exact same chance my father gave me. I wanted to make sure they knew their potential was limitless. Now, I sit in my own corner office on the 50th floor of Klein Dynamics. It is a massive, beautiful space with windows overlooking the entire Manhattan skyline. Ironically, it is exactly 3 doors down from the boardroom I used to clean. When I walk down the hallway, the senior executives step aside and nod respectfully. My translation team is the best in the country. I control the flow of billions of dollars in international communications. But sometimes I intentionally stay late. When the floor empties out and the night shift cleaning crew comes up with their carts, I make sure to walk out and say hello. I know all their names. I ask about their kids, because I know exactly what it feels like to be the invisible person in the room. Why father taught me that language is the most powerful weapon on earth. Noah Whitlock and Sebastian Klein thought they held all the power because they wore $3,000 suits and sat in high-rise offices. They thought my silence was submission. They were completely wrong. The day they underestimated me holding a mop was the day I silently retranslated their entire empire. And then I burned down everything they thought they controlled.